Alcoholics Anonymous. Step 4. Break down introspection. This step begins with a brief explanation of the 4 instincts in human beings which God has given us for the sole purpose of being happy. Without these instincts, no human being could survive. The instincts are as follows: sexual instinct, emotional instinct, material instinct, and social instinct. This information is extremely important and relevant for us as patients, as we will know what to write in our moral inventory of our lives. The first instinct we will break down is the sexual instinct, whose purpose is the reproduction of the species. However, human beings have taken this instinct beyond its purpose and, in many cases, have been severely damaged from childhood by pre-sexual games, rape, masturbation, pornography, taboos surrounding this topic, etc. Situations in which we, as patients, have been victims of society, and unfortunately, on many occasions, it is within the family unit itself that these types of events occur, causing our instincts to become disjointed. The material instinct is what makes us build our homes and harvest our food. In other words, it is the working part of the structure of a human being. However, this instinct is disrupted by the circumstances that a person has experienced, such as poverty or misery since childhood, economic deprivation. Likewise, there are people who have had everything in economic terms, but in the end, these individuals are greedy and do not really have a sense of money, because they have it but do not know what to do with it. Let's move on to another instinct, the emotional one, which is the affection we have in our interpersonal relationships. This is disrupted or damaged by emotional deprivation experienced within the home, beatings, humiliation, domestic violence, and rejection by the family. Unfortunately, this causes us to develop low self-esteem and leads to further problems, as our concept of love is flawed. However, by taking stock of our lives, we will become aware of the misconceptions we have had about life. Now let's move on to the social instinct, which is one of companionship and has been disrupted or damaged by the teasing we experienced in childhood, with nicknames and many other forms of social stigmatization. This is why addicts, alcoholics, and the emotionally ill have a severe resentment toward society, since at some point we were exposed and singled out, and this gave rise to many of our inferiority complexes. Our desires and demands that we have had from these instincts tyrannize us and cause harm to our environment. In fact, the vast majority of our problems stem from this, from misguided instincts. No human being, no matter how good they may seem, is exempt from this. In this 4th step, we will learn how, when, and where these instincts were disrupted. This is of great importance since the patient lives their entire life disoriented and does not know why they cannot change certain thoughts or patterns of behavior in their daily life that have harmed them. As we discover our emotional distortions, we will be able to begin to correct them. The 4th step is an energetic effort in which we can find the answers we have been searching for. Before going into detail about what inventory is, we must realize the problem we have had due to our lack of knowledge about this information, since without making a thorough inventory of ourselves, the faith that works in our daily lives is beyond our reach. Now let's look at some simple examples of this step, which demonstrate how our disjointed instincts have affected us. Suppose a person put sexual desire above everything else. In that case, this compelling instinct can destroy their chances of achieving material and emotional security, as well as maintaining their social position in the community. Another person may be so obsessed with economic security that all they want to do is accumulate money. They may go to the extreme of becoming a miser or even a loner who isolates themselves from family and friends. But the search for security is not always expressed in terms of money. Very often, we see a fearful human being insisting on total dependence on the guidance and protection of another, stronger person. The weak, by refusing to meet life's responsibilities with their own resources, never reach maturity. Their destiny is to always feel disappointed and helpless. Eventually, all their protectors flee or die, and once again, they are left alone and terrified. We have also seen men and women driven mad by power who devote themselves to trying to dominate their fellow human beings. Often, these people throw away any chance of legitimate security and a happy family life. Whenever a human being becomes a battleground for his own instincts, he cannot know peace. But the dangers do not end there. Whenever a person imposes his unreasonable instincts on others, the result is unhappiness. If, in your pursuit of wealth, you trample on the people who stand in your way, you are likely to arouse anger, jealousy, and revenge. If your sexual instinct runs wild, there will be a similar uproar. Demanding too much attention, protection, and love from other people can only incite repulsion and domination in those very protectors. Two emotions as unhealthy as the demands that provoke them. When the desire for personal prestige becomes uncontrollable, whether in your circle of friends or at the international conference table, there are always some people who suffer and often rebel. This clash of instincts can produce anything from a cold rebuff to a violent revolution. In this way, we come into conflict not only with ourselves but also with other people who also have instincts. These cases exemplify the way a sick person with severe mental or emotional disorders caused by traumatic events in childhood or adolescence acts, thinks, and behaves. Many of us have had these traumatic events in a childhood where our instincts were disrupted. Hence the importance of taking this inventory where we will find the missing link, the piece of the puzzle that will help us determine why we are the way we are today. We must also realize that the disruption of these instincts is the reason why we drink and take drugs in such a destructive way that the patient begins to kill themselves in stages. However, we have drunk for everything and for nothing, because we had everything or because we had nothing, to drown passions and rekindle others. We have always had an excuse to get drunk or take drugs. When examining these instincts, we are likely to suffer unpleasant or physical reactions, as it is not pleasant to contemplate this disease of the soul. This step speaks to us of an emotional illness that has killed thousands of people who do not necessarily have a problem with alcohol or drugs. It is the disease of the century, depression. When we find ourselves in this state of mind, which is fueled by feelings of guilt, we find a distorted pleasure because, as sick people, we have always played the role of victim in society and especially with our families. Deep down, we have enjoyed feeling sorry for ourselves because that way we have managed to get what we want. We are blackmailers and manipulators par excellence. However, depression has only led us back to the bottle and to the consumption of addictive substances, justifying ourselves in everything within our reach, even though we have failed in many aspects of our lives. Many of us lean toward the hypocrisy and grandiosity of our egocentrism, believing that we do not need the inventory because we think we were not such bad actors in the past. We even exaggerate the small successes we may have had in order to avoid this step. It is not pleasant to face our reality head-on, as our pride has always made us feel great, and we are afraid to truly find where we were the perpetrators or responsible for our actions. We believed that simply by stopping drinking or using drugs, our good character would be reborn in us. And this is another excuse for not taking a fourth step. However, the character defects we have are what have led to our destructive form of consumption. Another way to avoid this step is to think that other people are the ones with the problem, not us, that they are to blame for our misfortune. This lack of honesty is too great an obstacle to completing step 4. We believe that if we were treated better, we would be different. But this is far from reality, since the reality is that the sick person is someone who is rejected by society, and it is they who must change. Despite all these obstacles we face, our sponsor will always be there to tell us that our case, however murky and painful it may be, is not so unusual, as other people have suffered more serious consequences. They will encourage us, with their own experience, to follow the inventory with all the determination and honesty possible, which will make us see that pride in the inventory will not help us at all, since pride will disguise itself as shame, embarrassment, or fear of truly writing down the painful or even shameful events of our childhood and activities. We will now look at the case of sponsors who refuse to take a moral inventory of their lives. It is very sad that today there are veterans with more than 20 years who never have made a moral inventory of their lives because their egocentricity and belief that they know everything makes them feel that this step is not relevant to them. They unconsciously say that they are not tormented by their defects. The only way out for these individuals is to make them see that a crack in their enormous ego may be their salvation, as it may allow the light of reason to shine on them and work within them, since time within AA is relative because we are still human, and therefore we feel and continue to make mistakes in life. That is why most of us addicts have been masters of lies and deceit, always justifying and excusing our harmful behavior toward others. We always had plenty of excuses for hurting people, as well as for using drugs or continuing to drink. It never occurred to us that we were the ones who had to change to adjust to circumstances, whatever they might be. But in AA, we gradually came to realize that we had to do something about our vengeful resentments, our self-pity, and our undeserved pride. We had to recognize that every time we acted like big shots, people turned against us. We had to recognize that when we harbored grudges and planned revenge for such defeats, we were actually beating ourselves with the club of anger, blows we had wanted to strike at others. We realized that if we felt seriously upset, the first thing we had to do was calm down, regardless of the person or circumstances we believed were responsible for our upset. All our lives, we have deceived ourselves into believing that we have done the right thing because our resentments and self-pity were always justified. But we had to realize that if people were hurting us, it was a decision we made in the past that put us in a position to be hurt. We have to recognize that our vengeful actions or thoughts undoubtedly hurt us more than they hurt others. In this inventory, we will even have to remove the word blame from our vocabulary and replace it with the word responsibility. Since sick people have never wanted to rid themselves of this feeling of guilt. However, upon careful examination, we will realize that in reality, no one is guilty, but rather responsible. In the inventory, each of us must identify our most deeply rooted defects. Since each case is different and circumstances vary from person to person, that is why each of us will be able to identify the most serious defects in our lives so that we can find shoes that fit us perfectly and walk safely on the right path. In this moral inventory, we will have to make a list according to the framework of character defects, or what are known in religion as the deadly sins, which are human weaknesses that are the root of the dislocation of our instincts. These defects are pride, lust, greed, anger, sloth, envy, and gluttony. Pride tops this list for a reason, as this flaw tends to justify all the others, spurred on by conscious and unconscious fears. But the dangers do not end there. Every time a person imposes their unreasonable instincts on others, the consequence is unhappiness. If, in their pursuit of wealth, they trample on the people in their path, they are likely to arouse anger, jealousy, and revenge. If the sexual instinct runs wild, there will be a similar uproar. Demanding too much attention, protection, and love from other people can only incite repulsion and domination in those same protectors, two emotions as unhealthy as the demands that provoke them. However, there is a determining factor in this regard, as pride and fear come into play. Every time he tries to look inside himself, both his pride and his fears hold him back. Pride tells him, there's no need to bother doing it. And fear tells him, don't you dare do it. However, these are mere scare tactics when the prospect of taking inventory is truly willing to carry out this inventory. In this sense, when a person is fully committed to taking stock of themselves, they must realize that their character flaws are a consequence of their disjointed instincts, and that this has caused their drinking or consumption habits to become more acute. That they really have to get rid of their pride in order to be honest with themselves, and that it is necessary to have peace of mind and tranquility with themselves, since they will have to get rid of their old foundations or ideals so that new thoughts can begin to infiltrate. However, the question is, how do I take my moral inventory? Before answering, we would like to say that taking inventory is a lifelong practice, and that we must follow up in order to continue working on our most prevalent defects in our lives. To answer the question, you have to cover the 4 instincts within the questions, going back to the past and present, which may be when, how, and under what circumstances have I hurt other people and myself by insisting on satisfying my selfish desire for sexual relations? Who was hurt, and what damage did I do to them? Did I ruin my marriage and hurt my children? Did I jeopardize my reputation in the community? How exactly did I react to these situations when they occurred? Was I consumed by a feeling of guilt that nothing could alleviate? Or did I insist that I was the prey and not the predator, thus trying to absolve myself? How have I reacted to frustration in sexual matters? When rejected, have I become vengeful or depressed? Have I taken it out on third parties? If I have encountered rejection or coldness at home, have I used it as an excuse to have love affairs? Besides my drinking problem, what character defects contributed to my financial instability? Did they destroy my self-confidence and fill me with conflict, fear, and insecurity about my ability to do my jobs? Did I try to hide these feelings of inadequacy with bragging, cheating, lying, or shirking my responsibilities? Or did I complain that other people didn't recognize my extraordinary talents? Did I overestimate myself and play the role of an important person? Did I betray my colleagues and co-workers because of my excessive ambition and lack of principles? Did I waste money to keep up appearances? Did I borrow money recklessly without caring whether I could pay it back or not? Was I stingy, refusing to support my family properly? Did I cut corners in my business dealings in a dishonest way? What about attempts to make easy and quick money in the stock market and horse racing? The most common symptoms of emotional insecurity are anxiety, anger, self-pity, and depression. These stem from causes that sometimes seem to be within us, and other times seem to be external. To take stock of this, we must carefully consider the personal relationships that have consistently or periodically caused us problems. It should be noted that this type of insecurity usually arises whenever our instincts are threatened. Questions aimed at clarifying this issue might be as follows. Looking at both the past and the present, what sexual situations have caused me feelings of unease, bitterness, frustration, or depression? Considering each situation impartially, can I see where I was at fault? Was I beset by these perplexities because of my selfishness and exaggerated demands? Or, if my distress seemed to be caused by other people's behavior, why do I lack the ability to accept circumstances that I cannot change? These are the basic questions that can reveal the source of my unease and indicate whether I have the possibility of changing my own behavior in order to adapt serenely to self-discipline. Suppose that financial insecurity constantly arouses these same feelings. I can ask myself to what extent my own mistakes have fueled the anxieties that are eating away at me. And if other people's actions are part of the cause, what can I do about it? And if I cannot change the current circumstances, am I willing to take the necessary steps to adapt my life to these circumstances? These questions, and many others that will occur to us depending on the particular case, will help us discover the root causes. That is why, due to our twisted relationships with family, work, and society, we who are ill have suffered greatly, as we are incapable of having healthy relationships with other human beings because our pride digs too deep holes. We either insist on dominating others or insist on depending on them because people will always fail us, and even we will fail sooner or later. The problem is that our egocentricity has always demanded perfection from others when we are the opposite. Our demands have always led us to have a misconception of others. We do not let them fail. We feel that they have to be perfect, because otherwise we feel hurt and disappointed. Therefore, when taking our inventory, the key word is thoroughness. To that end, it is advisable to write down our questions and answers. It will help us think clearly and evaluate our behavior honestly. It will be the first tangible sign that we are fully prepared to move forward. It is vitally important to take this inventory of our lives in order to see our reality and feel a little peace with ourselves. That is why we invite you to seek the guidance and direction of your sponsor in taking this inventory. Thank you for joining us on this spiritual journey toward recovery. If you have found value in our content and would like to continue exploring topics related to Alcoholics Anonymous and personal transformation, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications to receive alerts for our new videos. Together, we can build a community of support and hope. Until next time, and take care.